Okay, so I have a question from Jacob from New South Wales in Australia. Hello, Jacob. He says, "Hey Tyler, what do you think grains? Hey Tyler, why do you think grains have been put down so much today by health experts, especially wheat? In the book, The Magnus Opus, if you haven't read it, check it out. It's my dad's book. My dad wrote this book called The Magnus Opus, which means the great work, after his 5th 40-day water fast. So he's got some really awesome, amazing information in there. But yeah, in the book, The Magnus Opus, it mentions that a lot of your diet should consist of seeds and grains. Why do you think seeds and grains are so highly regarded in this book? What experiences and health benefits can one gain from eating a high intake of sprouted grains and seeds? And do you think they're here to assist us in our evolution?" Wow, okay, Jacob, very good question. So, first off, I want to say I think that grains are highly attacked because of the things that are caused from eating present-day grains. When I say present-day grains, I believe that the main factor in what's causing health issues, especially digestive issues, is the process that grains go through in the process of storing them. Obviously, I think it's best to buy organic anything, so you don't have pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, all those types of suicidal types of things. So that's best to get. But then when, basically big agribusiness grows grain and they go to store it in those massive silos, there's something called weevils, essentially, that can get in and eat it and destroy the grain. So what they do is they spray it with aluminum, or they spray it with fluoride, or they spray it with all types of different potential pesticides. So you have a grain that sometimes, if it's sprayed with aluminum, because when the bugs eat it, it kills them, or fluoride or things like this, those are metals that react in the body very negatively. Now, when you're eating something that contains these types of pesticides or metals, over time and distance, our digestive system becomes very inflamed. In fact, you get to the point to where your body can't even handle a little bit anymore. There's so much overload of this metal, you eat even a little bit of grain or wheat that has this on it, and it's an immediate inflammation reaction, causes major problems. Now, this is my opinion based on the research that I've done. Now, what the mass media would like you to believe is that it's the gluten contained within the wheat. I don't actually think that's true. Could it be a part of it? Maybe. But you got to understand that the gluten is actually just the protein that's housed within the grain. And I believe that the protein is an amazing source of protein, amino acids, essentially for building muscle. In fact, if you look back thousands of years at the ancient Greeks and even the times of the Roman Empire and all these people, the Egyptians, they all used grains abundantly. Wheat and grains and seeds, they used these things quite abundantly because it was easy to grow in big crops and they could store it. And essentially that's how these people survived through winter. It was their main food storage. I believe they were brilliant, they were strong, they were healthy, and they never had any of these issues. So even if you look at the gladiators, for example, gladiators were called barley men because the gladiators consumed mainly barley. Because of the amount of protein that's housed in there, called gluten, the amount of protein that's in there makes you strong. It builds muscle. What really builds muscle is lifting weights and getting out in the sun, but having a good amount of protein in your diet is a major factor. So I think wheat and grains are the original vegetables that were mainly used to strengthen the body. And I have to give you a little bit of a background behind this. You see, this body was referred to as a temple, and in fact it was called King Solomon's temple when it was perfected. Sol-Am-On was 3 syllables, Sol coming from the basement of the house, which was basically from the feet to the navel, Sol. That's where the word solar comes from. It's where seeds are brought forth into the world, Sol, basically from the reproductive organs. Then from the navel to the throat was Om. Om, Sol, Om. And Om is where the organs are housed. Om is a sound that creates balance within the body. You can actually tune your organs and tune your body with sound. And there's vibrational frequencies, Rife technology, all these things that are pretty interesting if you look into it. I'm not going to go off too far, but organs are literally musical instruments. An organ is a musical instrument. We call these organs internally because they run on frequencies and communicate in very specific ways, and when they're in balance, you're healthy. When they're imbalanced, it's called dis-ease or disharmony. So there's ways to build Sol and Om and On. On was the Temple of Light in Heliopolis, Egypt. And it's where all light is perceived into the temple and projected out. What I mean by that is light is simply vibration. So when you see something, you're seeing a vibration, and that vibration is light. When you're hearing something, you're hearing the vibration through the ears. When you're smelling something, you're smelling the vibration. And when you're eating something, you're feeling the vibration through the taste buds and with signals through the brain, and there's also touch. So all of the senses can be perceived by the top part of the temple, King Solomon's temple. And the reason I tell you this is out in front of the temple there were always two pillars in front of these temples. Now at King Solomon's temple there were two names, Joachim, Jachin, Joachim, and Boaz, Boaz. Now Joachim literally meant to establish and to strengthen the temple. Now if you look at the word vegetable, vegetable means to strengthen, to establish. Basically, we strengthen our bodies with vegetables. Now, what are vegetables? Vegetables are the things that grow on Mother Nature's table. Okay, there's things that grow underneath the ground, things that grow right on the ground, and things that grow into the heavens and into the trees. And these correlate to the different levels of the body. And I don't want to go too much into it, but there's a profound wisdom that the Druids shared, the Egyptians shared, on how these things can be used, and it's literally flipped upside down. The roots and things underneath are good for the highest parts of us. The things that grow on nature's table are essentially for the center, and then the things that grow up in the trees were good for reproduction, for vitality, sexual virility, all of these types of things. It's quite interesting. So Joachim and vegetable meant to strengthen, and then Boaz meant to enliven, to invigorate, and to add joy into the temple. So once you had established a solid foundation and you were strong, you would also take the fruits from the trees and the things that added joy, added virility, added happiness, so to speak. And I can see this in certain people. There are certain people that are proponents for only vegetables and don't eat fruits because there's too much sugar. And I swear, you have conversations with people, you get to know these people, they're very solid, they're very grounded, they're strong, but there's no joy. And then you look at people that are all fruity. Literally, it's in our languaging. Boaz meant to enliven, to invigorate, to add joy. Fruit, the word literally means to enliven, to invigorate, to add joy. We say that person's very fruity. Well, you're saying they're very happy, they're very frugal, they're very, energetic. And if you look at fruitarian types of people, they're typically a lot more upbeat, a lot more energy, if you get what I'm saying. So, the reason I'm telling you this is because the grains were the things that also grew on Mother Nature's table that were good for strengthening us. They were good as a solid foundation. And, you even look back at the Paleolithic times. I know if you look at the paleo diet, they say, oh, no grains. But the reality is, people during paleo times, if you actually talk to a paleontologist, would tell you that they found bowls, they found mortar and pestles, they found the tools for using grains and making bread and these types of things. Now, essentially, I believe that we should get organic grains. We should get some that haven't been sprayed with pesticides and things, but if they have, really washing them, maybe with apple cider vinegar, giving them a good scrub, buying the grains ourselves, washing them off, making sure you don't have all of this stuff, and then potentially soaking them. You soak them, you allow them to germinate or sprout, and it doesn't have to fully sprout. They can just get really soft and you can eat them that way. You can literally take barley and soak it overnight and the next day eat it in that soft component. Or you can rinse it off a couple of times a day and let it continue to sprout, and a little seed particle, little growth thing will pop out. And that's its little root. And once that root pops out, there's an explosive amount of energy that can be gotten from those foods. There's a lot of energy, a lot of vitality, a lot of protein, a lot of fibers, a lot of really good stuff that will come through. And I believe should actually be one of the staples in our life, in our diet. There's a bread called Essene bread. What's it called? That's right, Essene bread or sprouted grain bread. And these things, even just one small, you slice it thin, one small piece with a little bit of almond butter and some honey and some banana or some avocado and tomato, maybe some onion, a little bit of salt. These things can be very satiating, very filling. One piece of that stuff is very nutritious. It's very healing for the body. I actually believe that people that have celiac disease or gluten intolerance could use sprouted grains to actually help them heal from the damage that's been caused by a lot of these pesticides and other things that have gone on. Now, if the grain is genetically modified, absolutely not. Don't even touch it. Stick to organic, stick to heirloom seeds. But I believe there's not actually a lot of these things that are genetically modified that are being provided in stores and things like this. Do your own research on it. Now I want to talk a little bit more about grains because I'm very passionate about them, and there's a reason. There was a grain called kamut. Kamut was an ancient wheat or an ancient grain used by the Egyptian culture. And the Egyptians ate this food and cultivated this food, and it was a part of their daily life for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years. If you look into the true history of Egypt, going back some 50,000 years or more, just after the times of Atlantis, according to Plato and other individuals who shared about this. And this can be found in the Egyptian Brotherhood as well. But at one point in my life, I was going through fasting. I was going through some really deep meditation and really like searching for my soul and who I was. And one thing that I noticed is that the grain, there's something we call the doctrine of signatures. A carrot looks like your eye, a tomato looks like your heart, a walnut looks like the brain, even with the hard shell. Celery looks like the bones. Grapes are in a cluster like the heart, and there's red grapes and green grapes, red blood cells, white blood cells, broccoli for the bronchioles. And I was looking at these little grains, and when they would sprout, they'd come out with these three little things. And I thought, wow, that really looks like the neurons in the brain. And what if they will actually affect the neurons in my brain to grow? And what if the kamut, which was literally rediscovered not too long ago, they broke into a tomb and they found 26 little grain berries of kamut. And there's a reason for this number, 26. And I won't get into it now. But they took that grain and they took it to Montana and they repropagated this grain. So now you can buy it abundantly. And I believe that it's the most unadulterated form of grain and that potentially it houses the records of ancient Egypt. I know I'm going out on a limb here. So I might sound crazy, but I don't care. I was looking at it, I was saying, wow, that looks like neurons of the brain. It comes from ancient Egypt. There's all these different cultures like quinoa and all these different types of grains that come from Central America and South America and Egypt and all over the world. What if they potentially house information that can be downloaded through our consciousness, through ingesting these foods over a period of time? You know, it's like you eat this food called mushrooms, and there are hallucinogenic mushrooms that are so powerful you download information, you have experiences. Well, what if all foods can do that? But what if we're just kind of dumbed down and we don't actually receive the messages because we're eating such a variety and maybe have toxicity in our environment? So what I did is I went on a fast, and I decided to purify my body and cleanse it out, stretch my body, do some strength training, get out in the sun, breathe deeply, drink a lot of water. I did a fast, and then when I broke my fast, I started sprouting these kamut grains, and I started eating them. I'd literally sprout them into grass and drink the grass juice. And I was eating them for probably about 5 or 6 days, and the most profound experiences I've ever had in my life started to happen. I would go down to the beach and I would start to have memories of ancient Egypt. And I won't even go into detail here. I did write a little bit of a post about some of the things I experienced, some of the things that I started doing to my friends and then having them do it to me. And it was a profound experience. So all I can say is, I believe that potentially seeds have the ability to download information into us that can potentially make us more intelligent, make us more conscious. Or, worst case scenario, I believe that grains, wheat, and seeds contain a lot of protein and can help us to build and put on muscle. So I believe we should not be shunning wheats and grains. We just need to be finding the right source and potentially sprouting them. There's another argument about what's called phytic acid. If you take a grain or a nut or a seed of any kind, there's a little thing called phytic acid, which is a digestive inhibitor. So if you don't sprout it, this digestive inhibitor could potentially cause problems as well. Now, animals, if you observe nature, like squirrels and chipmunks and birds, they'll actually take nuts and seeds and bury them. And the reason I believe they do this is because they'll wait for it to rain and actually germinate or get rid of that phytic acid. When you soak a seed or a nut in water overnight or for a period of time, it eliminates the phytic acid and then it takes on life. So maybe we should observe that and do the same thing. Soak these things, germinate these things, and then bring them into our bodies and eat them and receive the full nutrition that it has to offer. So with that being said, it is my opinion that it's not the actual gluten. In fact, when I lived in Missouri with my father was running fasting programs. I was 13 years old. They used to actually take gluten. They would specifically extract the gluten from wheat, and we would make chicken. They called it, I don't even remember what they called it, but it was this fake chicken made out of gluten. And we made this beautiful, nice sauce, and it was the most amazing thing. We'd cook it in the oven. I could probably get the recipe for you. I remember as a child, that was the most amazing, my favorite food. And at the time, I remember my dad, big muscles, absolutely ripped, and he lived on fresh, whole fruits, vegetables, salads. We had goats, we had our own chickens. We lived in a very specific way in harmony with nature, but he ate a lot of gluten. I remember seeing him all the time actually just taking wheat and swallowing it and eating it for breakfast, soaking it and eating in the morning with a little bit of honey and a little hot water or a little bit of goat's milk. And I can tell you that he was glowing. He was probably one of the healthiest people I'd ever seen in my life. His skin, his physique, his intelligence. So I believe personally that wheat is one of the greatest foods on the planet, as long as it's not being adulterated in the way that it is today. And maybe there's a reason why so much of it is adulterated, because of the benefits nutritionally and maybe even consciously that we can get from it. I don't know. I don't want to get into conspiracy theory, but there's a lot of people with these issues, digestive issues. I can tell you I've worked with people with celiac, gluten intolerance, irritable bowel syndrome, many problems, not able to eat wheat. You go through a level of fasting and detoxification, allowing the digestive system to heal, using bentonite clay and other things to extract those metals to really fully heal the body. I have a whole 13-week program that will completely heal your small intestine, your colon, your liver, your lymphatic system, pretty much heal your entire body. So I recommend getting into it. Don't be afraid of wheats. Just really look at the source of where it's coming from. And sorry I took so long, but obviously I'm passionate about this subject.